This right here is the Corsair 2000D. It is an ITX case that is supposed to combine a really small footprint with enough room for some pretty large components like massive 3-slot graphics cards and 360mm all-in-one coolers. And while this case has plenty of very good ideas and very good executions, it definitely has a few issues that we're going to talk about today. So without further ado, let's check out Corsair's first ITX case in almost a decade. Let's begin. I have the white version of the 2000D, but if you prefer, you can also get it in black, and you can choose if you want the model without fans or the one with 3 slim RGB fans in the front, and I got the one with the RGB fans. Since this is a vertical case, it has a very small footprint of only 20 by 27 centimeters, but with a height of 46 centimeters, it's about as tall as a typical mid-tower ATX case would be. So it's not as small as you might have expected it to be. It comes with mesh panels on all sides, even the top, and the mesh itself has that nice looking triangular pattern that we've seen on a lot of Corsair products lately. On the back, you just get a mesh dust filter and some cable management strips next to it that are meant to hold the power cable tightly because the power supply is positioned at the top of the case, and the top panel has a small cutout to feed the power cable to the back, so you cannot really see it at all from the front. And the whole case has a very minimalistic look to it, with very limited branding, which I personally really like. But as always, design is a subjective thing, and you just have to decide for yourself if you like this or not. The build quality and the finish are quite good. The chassis is made of metal, and all panels have a metal mesh held by a plastic frame, and everything just fits together rather well. The gap between the panels and the bottom corners can be a bit tighter, but the rest of the lines look pretty good without any other inconsistencies that I could see. The front I/O is easily accessible, and there you have a power button, reset button, 2 USB Type-A connections, 1 USB Type-C connection, and a combined audio jack. But the rear I/O, on the other hand, is pointed downwards, so it's not accessible at all. If you want to reach it, you will have to tilt your whole case, so make sure that the front I/O is enough for anything you want to plug in and out regularly. It is very easy to open it up, and on the inside we can see plenty of space for both the ITX motherboard and the GPU on one side. According to specs, you can fit a 3-slot GPU of up to 365mm in length, and next to the motherboard you can fit some 2.5-inch SSDs, but they only included 1 bracket instead of 2 like the picture on their website shows. And on the other side, there is enough space for an SFX-L power supply. You also get an extra bracket over the motherboard side to mount 3 more fans or a water cooler of up to 360mm. If you want to go for air cooling instead, Corsair specs say that you can only fit coolers up to 90mm of height, but you can easily fit a large tower cooler in here, up to 165mm or so, so you actually have plenty of options. Now for my build here, I went with the ROG X670E Strix motherboard with a Ryzen 7 7800X3D inside, 32GB of Corsair Vengeance DDR5 memory, and Corsair H150i Elite LCD all-in-one cooler, since Corsair is pushing the 360 support as a key feature. For the GPU, I went with the Gigabyte RTX 4070 Aero. Now, I wanted to use a 4080 or 4090, but those are more than 3 slots thick, so they didn't fit. And for the power supply, I used a 1000 watt Corsair model, so even though it's SFX, it is still powerful enough and not really a limiting factor anymore. And to be honest, I kind of regret going for water cooling, as it made the build pretty messy and a lot more difficult than I expected it to be. It adds another hub plus a bunch of extra cables to an already small space, and when you put the bracket with the cooler in place, it really kind of pushes everything together and bends the tubes a bit too much for my liking. I even replaced the regular fans with these slim RGB fans to give it a bit more space, which does work, but it was still a bit of a push to just put everything in its place. I mean, it's nice to have another side with RGB if you're into that, and it's definitely necessary if you go for a high-powered CPU that needs a chunky water cooler. But if you don't, and you pick a nice AMD processor that uses very little power, for example, going for an air cooler would be an easier and much less stressful option. Now, if I compare that experience to something like the Cooler Master NR200P Max or the N60 H1, it's just a bit less user-friendly, I would say. And it just feels like a missed opportunity for Corsair to not do something similar. If they sold this as a complete kit with a built-in Corsair water cooler and a built-in Corsair power supply, and then have the tubes and cables fitted perfectly to size and just pre-cable managed, it would be such a quality of life improvement, in my opinion, especially with a small case like this one that was built with a high power system in mind. And they have the power supplies and the water coolers to go with it, so it just seems like a logical step to take. But who knows, I mean, Cooler Master also just released a case before they came up with the Max P version that included the water cooler and the power supply, and I'm just really hoping that Corsair will just follow the same train of thought. Anyway, let's see how this case performs. Under a CPU load only, the temps were looking very comfortable, but that isn't really surprising since the 7800 X3D only uses 77 watts here. The GPU barely got warm, and the motherboard and case temperature were barely above what you would see running the system in idle. While gaming, however, the CPU was using 52 watts of power and sitting at 55 degrees Celsius. The GPU was using 200 watts of power and had its cores running at 66 degrees, memory at 67 degrees, and the hotspot at 80 degrees Celsius, so it was completely comfortable as well. Internally, the case temperature was at 36 degrees, while the motherboard sensor ended up at 37 degrees Celsius. So with this particular build, the performance was completely fine. Here in the Netherlands, the Corsair 2000D without any fans is selling for 90 euros for the black one or 110 euros for the white one. And the model with 3 slim RGB fans is being sold for 150. In the US, however, you need to set aside $105 for the base model or $160 for the RGB model. Now, 100 or so euros doesn't feel too bad for the product you're getting, especially when you consider ITX cases aren't sold in huge quantities. But I would say that the RGB version actually makes more sense, as you definitely want some fans, and a premium of 50-ish euros or dollars for 3 fitted slim RGB fans plus the controller plus the fan grills isn't a bad deal at all. So even if it's not as perfectly thought out as I wanted it to be, with the hard-to-reach rear I/O, fiddly water cooler installation and cable management, if you like this design, you can definitely make it work. But I do think that it's not really an innovative design, which is kind of what I was expecting from a brand as dominant as Corsair. It just feels like we've seen this before, and it doesn't really move the market forward. That being said, having enough space for a relatively big GPU plus either a big water cooler or a large air cooler to pair with a high-powered processor, while having that small footprint and enough airflow to keep the performance on point, is a fairly unique thing to offer. Not many small form factor cases can do that. So this is one big upside. Plus, it looks nice, it feels decent, and it does perform great. So if this is something that fits your personal use case and you really like it, just go for it. But do explore other options and prices in your region before making your decision. This video is brought to you by Seasonic and their brand new Vertex power supplies. These fully modular power supplies are extremely efficient and very quiet due to their fan design and their hybrid fan mode that stops the fans completely under 40% load. They come with a variety of connections for any kind of systems you have in mind, including the new 12-volt high-power cable for the latest RTX graphics cards, and as a little bonus, you get a cozy 10-year-long warranty. Check them out using the links in the description below. Thank you all for watching. I hope you liked this video because I really enjoyed doing a case review, to be honest. If you liked it and you want to see more videos like this one, do consider clicking that subscribe button. Bye guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!